Her scream tore through the night. The sound of flesh striking flesh echoed in the wooden shack as rough hands dragged Lila Monroe across the dirt floor. She was only 23, yet her body was already covered in bruises, her spirit battered by endless cruelty. The men laughed while the sheriff himself leaned back in his chair, watching as if it was a form of entertainment. They shoved her into a corner, tore the ribbon from her hair, and spit words meant to break her soul. "Tomorrow," Sheriff Silas Blackwood sneered, "you will stand in the square. We will shave that pretty head of yours before the whole town. Let them see what happens to a woman who dares to speak against me." Lila gasped for air, her chest heaving, her pride burning hotter than the wounds on her skin. She knew what that punishment meant. Not death, but something worse. A public humiliation that would strip away her dignity forever. Every hour of that long night was filled with fear. Her wrists were bound. Her body ached from the blows, yet her eyes still carried a spark of defiance. She whispered to herself that she would not let them win. She would rather die running than stand in the square as their victim. When the guard outside dozed off, she seized her only chance. She slammed her shoulder into the rotten wooden wall. The panel cracked. She pushed again, ignoring the sting of splinters that dug into her arms. With one final strike, the wood gave way. She crawled through the jagged hole, tearing her skin as she forced her body into the night. Rain pelted her bare shoulders as she stumbled across the yard. She had no dress, only a dirty canvas sheet she yanked from the cell. Her feet were raw against the gravel, her breath ragged as she dashed into the dark. Behind her, the shack doors burst open, voices shouting, boots pounding, but the storm covered her tracks, the thunder masking her cries. She ran until her lungs burned like fire. She plunged into the reeds by the riverbank, clutching the sheet tight against her body. Every muscle screamed, "Bum!" But her mind repeated the same thought. Keep moving. Do not stop. Do not let them catch you. Hours passed. Her body shivered, her teeth chattered, but her spirit refused to break. She pressed her face to the wet earth and begged the night for mercy. Images flashed in her mind of the square, the crowd, the cruel laughters. The blade scraped her scalp. She could almost hear it, the sound of scissors cutting away her last shred of pride. Tears streaked down her bruised cheeks as she clenched her fists and vowed she would never let them see her fall. At last the rain eased. The horizon glowed faint with the first light of dawn. Lila crawled from the reeds, drenched and trembling, the canvas sheet clinging to her frame. Her heart still raced, every sound around her a threat, every shadow a reminder of the men hunting her. She whispered to herself that she had survived the night. But would she survive the morning? Somewhere beyond the bend of the river, she heard the distant echo of hooves. Closer and closer they came. Her breath froze. Her body stiffened. Had they already found her? Was this the end of her escape? And in that moment of dread, she asked the question that no terrified heart could silence. If the law itself is corrupt, if mercy is gone, who will rise to save a woman when all of society wants her broken? The sun had already climbed high when Lila stumbled out of the reeds. The storm was gone, the sky a clear blue, yet her body shook as if the night still clung to her. Her bare feet were cut and raw, her arms streaked with mud, and the canvas sheet wrapped around her felt heavier with every step. She followed the curve of the river, hoping to find a village or even a barn where she could hide, but the land was empty, only tall grass swaying in the warm breeze. Her stomach ached from hunger, her lips cracked with thirst. Each step was slower than the last, and until her knees gave way and she dropped to the ground. That was when she heard it, hooves on dry earth, steady, powerful, drawing closer. Her heart jumped into her throat. She scrambled to her feet, clutching the sheet tight against her chest. Every sound felt like a death sentence. Had they found her already? Was this the moment she would be dragged back to face the blade? Out of the glare of the sun came a rider, a tall man on a dark horse, shoulders broad, face weathered by years of sun and dust. He wore a red scarf at his neck, his eyes shaded beneath the brim of a wide hat. In his hand was a hunting knife, small but sharp, catching the sunlight as he leaned forward in his saddle. Lila froze. Her breath came in shallow gasps. The terror of the night returned in one crushing wave. She dropped to her knees, clutching the sheet tighter. and the words spilled from her lips before she could stop them. "No, please, don't shave it off." The rider stopped cold. His horse pawed the ground, uneasy with the tension in the air. The man looked down at her, confusion flickering across his face. He saw not a criminal, not a runaway, but a young woman beaten down and begging for her dignity. Slowly, he sheathed the knife at his belt and raised both hands where she could see. "I do not aim to hurt you," he said, his voice low and calm, but Lila shook her head, rocking back and forth in the dirt. Her body trembled, her voice breaking as she repeated the same plea. "Please, don't shave my head, please." The man slid off his horse, careful and deliberate, and removed the scarf from his neck. He placed it on the ground between them, then stepped back. From his saddlebag, he pulled out a canteen and set it beside the scarf. No sudden moves, no threats, only patience. For a long moment, Lila did not move, but the thirst burning in her throat was too strong. She inched forward, grabbed the canteen, and drank as if her life depended on it. Water dripped down her chin, and for the first time since her escape, her body eased. The man studied her with quiet eyes. "My name is Cole Bennett," he said at last, "but the question is not who I am." He glanced toward the horizon, where a faint dust cloud began to rise, the sound of more hooves carried on the wind. "The question is whether we have enough time before they catch up." Cole's eyes narrowed as the dust cloud grew larger on the horizon. He knew the sound of a posse when he heard one, the rhythm of hooves, the sharp call of men shouting orders. Sheriff Blackwood's hunters were closing in fast. He looked at Lila, still clutching the canteen with trembling hands. Her face was pale, her body worn down, yet in her eyes there was fire. She had run through a storm, survived the night, and still refused to break. Cole saw enough strength in her to know she was worth fighting for. "Up," he said, motioning to his horse. She hesitated, then pulled herself up with his help, gripping the saddle tight as the horse shifted beneath her. Cole swung up behind her, steadying the reins. The sound of hooves was louder now, echoing across the open plain. "Hold on," he muttered. The horse leapt forward, tearing down the riverbank, weaving into tall grass. Lila clung to him, her breath quick and sharp. The wind whipped against her face as branches clawed at her arms. Shots rang out behind them. One bullet tore through the grass just inches away. Cole leaned low, urging the horse faster, guiding it into the reeds by the river. The posse thundered past the first bend, scattering through the brush. Cole pulled the horse to a halt. "Stay down," he whispered. They slipped off into the reeds, crouching low as the men closed in. The splash of boots in shallow water was all around them. One rider spotted movement and charged forward. Cole stepped out first, swinging his fist hard. The man toppled into the mud with a grunt, his gun falling free. Another raised his revolver. Cole snapped his own pistol up and fired, the shot striking the barrel and knocking the weapon clean from the man's hand. Through the chaos, Lila felt something shift inside her. Fear had ruled her every step, but now rage burned brighter. When another deputy lunged toward them, she seized a broken branch and swung with all her strength. The crack echoed as the man stumbled, dazed and bleeding from his temple. She stood over him, shaking but unyielding. Cole gave her a quick nod. "You fight better than half the men I know." For the first time, Lila almost smiled. She realized she was no longer running just to survive. She was ready to stand, to strike back, to reclaim her pride. But this fight was only beginning. More men were coming, and Blackwood himself was still out there, waiting to finish what he had started. If you've been drawn into Lila's escape and want to see how she and Cole stand against the sheriff's power, make sure you subscribe. That way you will not miss the next part of this Wild West story, because in the next chapter, they will walk straight into a courtroom that is already stacked against them. Cole knew they could not keep running forever, so he led Lila to Fort Allen, a dusty outpost with a courthouse that looked more like a barn than a hall of justice. The paint was peeling, the flag out front hung limp, and the sound of flies filled the air. Still, it was the only place where the law might stand a chance against Sheriff Blackwood. Lila walked beside him, her canvas sheet now pinned together with a strip of cloth he had torn from his saddlebag. Every step hurt, but she held her head high. She was tired of crawling. She wanted the world to see that she was more than a victim. Inside the courthouse, the judge sat slouched behind a desk stacked with dusty papers. He was a thick man with small eyes, and he smiled too quickly when Cole mentioned Blackwood's name. Lila's stomach sank. She recognized the look of a man already bought and paid for. Cole placed a small black ledger on the desk. This book shows every bribe, every unlawful arrest, and every woman humiliated under Blackwood's orders, he said, but the judge only shrugged, tapping his fingers on the desk as if he was waiting for his supper. Then the doors burst open. Blackwood's deputies stormed in, led by Evan Pike with a bandage still wrapped around his head. He grinned when he saw Lila. Thought you could run, he jeered. Thought you could hide. The room erupted in chaos. One deputy lunged for Lila. She grabbed the nearest thing she could find, a bottle of ink from the judge's desk, and hurled it straight into the man's face. The black liquid splattered, blinding him as he stumbled back with a howl. Cole fired a warning shot into the ceiling, the crack of the gun silencing the room. Any man takes one more step and I will drop him where he stands. For a moment, nobody moved. Even the judge sat frozen, his mouth half open. Lila seized the moment. She snatched up the wooden gavel and slammed it into the side of the nearest window, shattering the glass. The shards rained down as sunlight poured in. Her chest heaved, her eyes blazing. She was no longer the girl begging for mercy at the riverbank. She was a fighter, and everyone in that room saw it. Cole turned back to the judge. You will send a wire to the U.S. Marshal right now, and if you value what little reputation you still have, you will deliver this ledger with your own hand. The judge hesitated, sweat beading on his brow. Finally, he nodded, fumbling for the telegraph key on the corner table. But outside the courthouse, the crowd was already gathering. Sheriff Blackwood had arrived in town, and he was ready to put on a show. Will, Cole, and Lila managed to expose him before the crowd turns against them. The square of Dust Ferry was packed with people when Cole and Lila stepped outside. The sun was blazing, the air thick with tension. Sheriff Blackwood stood tall at the center, his hand resting on his pistol, his voice booming as he called for order. He announced that justice would be served the old way, that the girl would be shamed for daring to defy him. But this time the crowd did not laugh. They did not cheer. They watched in silence as Lila walked forward, her bruises still fresh, her hair tangled. Her canvas sheet clinging to her like armor, she held her head high, every step slow and deliberate. When she reached the center, she did something no one expected. She pulled a strand of her own hair, cut it with a shard of glass, and let it fall to the dirt. Her voice was clear. My honor does not live in my hair. It lives in my spirit, and no man can take that from me. A murmur spread through the square. People shifted uneasily. Even the deputies who once followed Blackwood with pride now lowered their eyes. Evan Pike tried to draw his revolver, but Cole was faster. His shot rang out. Striking the weapon from Evan's hand, the crowd gasped, and in that moment, the U.S. Marshal rode in, flanked by men in clean blue coats. Blackwood's reign ended as the iron cuffs locked around his wrist. The square erupted, not in laughter, but in cheers. For once, justice belonged to the people. Lila's shoulders shook, but this time with relief, not fear. Cole placed a steady hand on her arm. You are safe now, he whispered. Weeks later, Dust Ferry was different. The cruel laws were torn down. Lila began teaching children in a small schoolhouse by the river. Cole built a safe crossing where travelers could rest without fear. Life slowly returned to the land, and with it, hope. And yet, the story leaves us with questions. What gives a person the strength to fight when everything is against them? Is it the will to survive, or the refusal to let others decide their worth? And in our own lives, when injustice rises, will we stand tall like Lila, or turn away in silence? If you felt inspired by Lila's courage, give this video a like. And if you want more Wild West stories of justice, survival, and love, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Together, we will keep these stories alive so they can remind us what it means to stand for what is right. Because in the end, every fight for dignity is a fight worth remembering.